Welcome, everyone, to the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. Because COVID Act Now has reported that our community is in the severe risk category, we've moved our worship services and our large gatherings online. There are still opportunities for small groups to gather in the church, and there's opportunities for outdoor activities. But at the present time, we're having all of our large groups online. We will reopen the sanctuary on Sunday mornings for vaccinated members when we get to the high-risk category. And that vaccinated group will help prepare for the general reopening by being part of the safety team. And we will reopen to the general public when we reach the medium risk category. I've been seeing a lot of reports by friends who are chaplains in hospitals saying that half of the population of their hospitals are the COVID virus. And we've been seeing through social media different members reporting that they've been infected by the virus. So we are working together to keep everybody safe, and we want to thank you for all you're doing to help us keep our community and our congregation safe. We are changing largely against our will. I've been reading this week about churches that have been doing online worship and online meetings for different ways for over decades ago. And we're just catching up, but we're catching up because we have to. It's the challenge of our time. So we thank you for helping us stay safe and helping us evolve and learn new ways to meet challenges. Let us begin. This morning we will be talking about transformation, and these words were written by the poet Rumi long before Charles Darwin ever came up with the theory of evolution. Our opening words: little by little wean yourself. This is the gist of what I have to say. From an embryo whose nourishment comes in the blood, move to an infant drinking milk, to a child on solid food, to a searcher after wisdom, to a hunter of more invisible game. Think how it is to have a conversation with an embryo. You might say, the world outside is vast and intricate. There are wheat fields and mountain passes and orchards in bloom. At night, there are millions of galaxies and the sunlight and the beauty of friends dancing at a wedding. You ask the embryo why he or she stays cooped up in the dark with eyes closed. Listen to the answer. There is no other world. I only know what I've experienced. You must be hallucinating. Let us go into that new world together. Come, let us worship together.
This is a day of new beginnings, time to remember and move on, time to believe what love is bringing, laying to rest the pain that's gone. God is alive and goes before us to show and share what love can do. This is a day of new beginnings. Our God is making all things new.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another, this is our great covenant.
That maketh all things new, the bloom in earth, our thoughts within, our pilgrim feet with thy dew, in gladness hither turns again. From hand to hand the greeting flows, from eye to eye the signals run, from heart to heart the bright hope glows, the seekers of the light are one. One in the freedom of the truth, one in the joy of paths untrod, one in the soul's perennial youth, one in the larger thought of God. The freer step, the fuller breath, the wide horizon's grander view, the sense of life that knows no death, the life that maketh all things new.
Good morning. It is good to be gathered today in the ways that we can. And I have a story to share with you that is a story about miracles. And I wonder what you think the miracle in this story is. It is an old story, a Celtic legend from a pagan story that took place long ago in Ireland. And in those days, in that time, all of the fertile land was owned by just a few wealthy landowners. And the poor people were forced to eke out what living they could in the rocky hills above. And I wonder if you know much about planting. What grows in rocky hills? Do lots and lots of good food and crops grow in rocky hills? No, it's a lot harder to grow there, isn't it? Well, things went on for a long time, but one year, there came a year when the crops began to fail. It was a terrible year for harvests, and the poor people, the peasants in that land, always had a hard time getting enough to eat, but in this year, when the crops were going bad, they had almost nothing. And Bridget went to the local landowner who had huge fields of land and said, the people don't have enough to eat. They barely have an onion or a carrot that they can have for their supper. Surely you can donate some of your land to the poor so they can grow better food so that they can survive. And I wonder what you think the landowner said. He said, you know, Bridget, I will think on it, but to tell you the truth, if the peasants just worked harder, then surely they could fend for themselves. A week went by, and things got even worse. And Bridget returned to the landowner, and she said, don't you see that you have to do something to help these people? They are reduced to going out and finding grass and shamrocks and trying to eat it. They don't have food. Can't you please help them? And the landowner said, Bridget, I am a busy man. And in fact, I feel like you're kind of wasting both of our time by coming here and talking to me when surely you are so resourceful. You could be talking to the people, to the peasants, to help them figure out ways to get better food. What are you doing here? Go away. I don't have time for this. And a few more weeks went by. And then Bridget returned to the landowner in a rage, and she said, it has gotten so much worse. You have to do something. The children are starving, and you have done nothing. And the landowner looked at her and said, you know, Bridget, surely it cannot be as bad as all that. You do not look like you're starving. And in fact, that is a fine wool coat you have on your shoulders. But let it not be said that I am a stingy man. In fact, I'll tell you what. You take your cloak out to the plain, and you spread it out, and whatever the cloak covers, I will donate to the poor. And Bridget said, tax-free? And the landowner said, fine, tax-free, whatever you can cover, but do not ask for anything more. And so Bridget and 3 of her sisters went out to the very center of the great fields that belonged to this landowner. And each of them took a corner of Bridget's white cloak, and she said, okay, girls, now pull it taut. And they each pulled it. And then Bridget said, take a step backwards. And they each took a step back. And she said, continue, keep on walking backwards. And they walked backwards, and that cloak, it stretched and stretched until the entire plain was covered. Now that afternoon, the landowner went out to the top of the parapet in his castle to look over his lands, as he often did. And at first he thought, my goodness, there's been snow. But then he saw that the hills above were not covered, where they were bare. And so he thought, the cloak. And indeed, Bridget's white cloak had stretched to cover the entire land. And it wasn't long before she came to him to say, okay, as you have promised. And he said, yes, as of tomorrow, they can have the plain, it's theirs. And she said, is that all you will do for them? The landowner said, fine, I will also give 100 bags of oat grain so that they can prosper, they can plant it. And Bridget said, well, that's fine for tomorrow, but what about today? And he said, Bridget, okay. I will prepare a feast for everyone. And she asked, well, what will be in that feast? And he said, okay, stews and roasts and mashes and cakes and jellies. Surely that's enough. And Bridget said, what about bags to take home? And he said, all right, bags to take home. And he said, Bridget, You know, if you spread the word as efficiently as you have spread your cloak, there will not be a soul in all of Ireland who does not make this feast. And so it was that Bridget helped the poor find food. And that is the story for this morning.
The Worst Thing by Talon Harkin. The worst thing that we ever did was put God in the sky, out of reach, pulling the divinity from the leaf, shifting out the holy from our bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made. A hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere. To put in a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we did was take the dance and song out of prayer and make it sit upright, straight, and cross its legs, removed it of its rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul and every breath. So let's put a little God or the holy back in and say joy. 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 And I know you're screaming it in your homes as you have that cup of coffee or tea. There are a lot of joys and concerns, but the main joy I want to bring is the joy that people understood. I saw a posting, and people understood why we have to be close this weekend. And that there are hopes that next Sunday or the Sunday after, or whenever the wrist falls, we will be back together again. So we'll say joy every week that we're alive and we're well and we're healthy and that we are a community. And we say joy when we will return. A prayer. Grant us serenity, grant us peace. Grant us the understanding and the love and the commitment to this world so that we can make it a better place. You have given us voice, arms, legs, ability, thought, a voice, and we will use all the gifts that we have to ensure that the world is a better place, a loving place, a joyful place. Amen.
Like the children of the Israelites, God's gonna Good morning. Thank you for joining us today online, wherever you're watching from and whenever you're watching us. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Administration here at TVUUC. Today is a Share the Plate Sunday. What that means is that any contribution that comes in today that is not designated as a pledge will be split between our Share the Plate organization and the TVUUC General Operating Fund. Today's organization is the Knox County Office on Aging. And in just a few minutes, you're going to hear from a representative of that organization who will tell you what they do and why they do what they do. Right now, though, my job is to tell you how to give. So if you are watching right now online, you can go to tvuuc.org/give, or you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give. If you are a member and you have a Realm account, you can also log into your Realm account and give that way. Of course, you can also mail a check into the church office. So however you would like to give, we appreciate everything that comes in, and I know that the Knox County Office on Aging will also. So once again, thank you for joining us. Have a blessed day.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Dottie Livers, and I'm the director of the Knox County Office on Aging. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to tell you about our organization. If you don't know about the Knox County Office on Aging, we provide over 20 programs and services that support older adults and their families. And we do this in many ways that help people who may be homebound, who may need a meal through our mobile meals program, or help through case management, information and referral, and other programs that help support older adults to stay living independently for as long as possible. We do that through many ways in our community, and we rely heavily on community support to help us in continuing our efforts to support older adults and their families. One of the things is, and many probably can't see this, but we have our Senior Service Directory, which is a free resource for those in the community to get help about local resources. We make this free to the community thanks to some contributions and thanks to the support of others. So the contributions that we get at our organization go to help keep our programs going and help keep them strong and help keep individuals, as I said, in their homes. Our organization has been around for a number of years, and we help all older adults regardless of life situation, but we have a priority to help those who are frail and who are low income. So we do a lot to support those individuals, and many times what we assess in the community as far as needs are really to help see what we can do. Programs often start based on the needs that are assessed, and we try to meet those needs as best we can. So I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share the plate with you all. If you need anything, you can call us at 524-2786 if we can provide any support to you as well. So thank you very much.
In these days full of fear, when the future's so unclear, when our best, even our best, may not suffice, we take a breath and start again We reach for hope, we face the pain, and we give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. We give thanks in hard times for the hope that we find in the faces of the ones who struggle on. Every time they take a stand, they bring healing to the land, and we give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. In these days full of rage, full of violence uncontained, when we feel that there's no way to ease our minds, we take a breath and start anew. We reach for peace in all we do, and we give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. We give thanks in hard times for the peace that we find in the silence that we hold within our hearts. Every time we seek that guide, there is healing deep inside, and we give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. In these days full of hate, when the cruelty seems too great, when we fear all we can do is be resigned, we take a breath and start once more. We live so love will be restored, and we give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. We give thanks in hard times for the love that we find in the daily acts of kindness all around. Every time our caring shows, we bring healing as we go, and we give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. We give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times. We give thanks, we offer thanks in these hard times.
My father of blessed memory was an Episcopal priest, and he once told me about a cartoon he saw in the New Yorker that was set in biblical times. Two men wearing robes and sandals walking out of the wedding at Cana, when one turned to the other and said, "Sure, he turned water into wine, but it was really a rather ordinary Merlot." This morning, I want to talk about transformation. And the Bible is full of miracle stories of transformation. Water turns into wine, the blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk, the dead rise again, the living are transfigured. Crack the Bible open anywhere, and your chances are you'll find a miracle story. And yet, historically, Unitarians have been skeptical of miracle stories. Thomas Jefferson, who described himself as a Unitarian, edited his own Bible called The Life and Morals of Jesus, where he kept the ethical and spiritual teachings, but he edited out the miracle stories. He was skeptical of anything that felt too supernatural. Ralph Waldo Emerson gave his famous Harvard Divinity School address in 1838, and he argued that divine law is natural law. Divine law is natural law. These divine laws aren't written anywhere on paper so much as they are written in our own hearts. And you can never quite get them into language and put them into a book and declare that that book is infallible. And yet we can see these laws in life. He said we read them hourly in each other's faces and in each other's actions and in our own remorse. Emerson went so far as to claim that Jesus shared his ideas about miracles. He told the Divinity School students that Jesus spoke of miracles because he felt all of life was a miracle, and that everything we do is a miracle, and that this miracle shines in us as our character ascends and we do good things in the world and appreciate the miraculous in the natural. However, his affirmation that divine law is natural law also came with a criticism. He declared the word miracle as pronounced by the churches gives a false impression. It is a monster. It is not one with the blowing clover and the falling rain. According to Emerson, if we want to see a miracle, we need to go out into nature and see it. And we do have a lot of falling rain today, so we could see it in the falling rain or in the blowing clover. Or as Jesus said, consider the lilies of the field, how they neither toil or spin, but Solomon in all his glory was never clothed as one of these. We can look for the miraculous in the natural world. That's not to say that all Unitarians have denied miracle stories. Indeed, after Emerson gave his Harvard Divinity School address, he wasn't invited back to speak at that school for almost 30 years. And Andrew Norton, a Unitarian scholar, declared that his sermon on that occasion was just the latest form of infidelity. So he was disapproved of by many, and yet some of the people who believed in miracles also felt that the church needs to be a place that includes faith and doubt. Faith and doubt. And that's why Emerson was able to preach in Unitarian pulpits his entire life, even after he gave up the ministry himself. And all of this history is just a preface. It's just a preface for what I want to talk about today, the miracle of transformation. For just as the Bible tells us the story of the wedding in Cana, where Jesus turned water into wine, we are called to transformation in our time. We are called to turn despair into hope, animosity into friendship and peace, fear into faith, sadness into joy, lamentations into psalms. We are called to the work of transformation. And if you're engaged in the work of transformation, then you know it requires a faith in miracles. For the record, I grew up in the Episcopal Church, which in the South is known for its permissive attitudes toward alcohol. I once heard someone say, of Episcopalians, that wherever two or more are gathered, there's a fifth. And I heard another member of the congregation, an elder, say, yes, Jesus turned the water into wine, but the Methodists turned the wine into grape juice. And so, as much as I enjoy the humor of this kind, I recognize that there are people in our congregation who are in recovery alcoholics, recovering Narcotics Anonymous, many people who turning the wine into grape juice is a life-saving miracle, a life-saving miracle. So this morning I want to use the metaphor of water into wine, but feel free to translate it into grape juice, if that is a life-saving option. Translate it into any non-alcoholic beverage that might be on the market. My goal this morning is not to romanticize a product. My goal is to talk about the power of transformation in our own lives. And in many ways, wine is a great metaphor for transformation in the spiritual life. A few years ago, Nathan Packey invited me to go to a wine tasting. And I had never been to a wine tasting before. It was not something I'd ever done. So I thought, why not? Why not do it for the first time? And I wasn't at the wine tasting very long before it occurred to me that sommeliers, or wine experts, talk about wine in much the same way as some theologians talk about God, which is to say they use vague, abstract, and opaque language to talk about the subject. The sommelier will say something like, "This wine is angular, austere, structured, complex, intellectually satisfying, and accessible." Now, I'm pretty sure I've heard Whitehead and some of the process theologians talk about God using the exact words, and if not the exact words, at least something close to it. The 20th century Unitarian theologian Henry Nelson Wyman was famous for talking about God in the most abstract ways. For him, God was a natural process, an object of sensuous experience, a statement of supreme value, an entity speculatively conceived, an intellectual conception of the source of all good, the ground of all being, creativity, and transformation, which is another way to say that God is angular, austere, structured, complex, intellectually satisfying, and accessible. However, on a practical level, what Wyman and Whitehead and Marjorie Suhaki and other feminist process theologians would tell you is you don't have to have the right words to live a life of creativity and transformation. You don't have to have the right theological terms to live and move and have your being in that experience of creativity and transformation. The other day, I was walking in Seven Islands State Birding Park, which is not that far from Knoxville, when I came across a bench. So Seven Islands is known for its wide variety of birds of all different kinds that live there or nest there at different times. And I saw a bench dedicated in memory of someone, inscribed with these words. The bench read, "Look for the songs hidden in the eggs." Look for the songs hidden in the eggs. Which is to say, if we want to hear the song of the wood thrush or the sparrow or the bobolink or the yellow warbler, there has to be transformation. Before we can hear the bird song, there has to be transformation. The songwriter Leonard Cohen once wrote, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." But I would add, that's also how the birds get out. Before there can be bird song, there has to be a crack in the egg. So if we want to know where transformation begins, we need to look for the broken places in our lives, the cracked places in our lives. Look for the destructive event that might usher in a new era of creativity. They say if you want to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs. And nature says the same thing about birdsong. After a long process of incubation, eggs will be broken in order to have birdsong. Now, the hatching of eggs is done best without any human interference with the nesting process. And we would be wise to stay away from any nests that have eggs in them. However, when it comes to wine, anyone who wants wine will have to smash some grapes. There's going to have to be some human agency involved. Someone's going to have to smash grapes. Destruction will precede creation. Indeed, grapes are 80% water. Grapes are 80% water. Therefore, every drop of rain that falls, and every time a farmer waters her vineyard, they are involved in a creative process that turns water into wine. After the grapes are smashed, the process of fermentation begins. And wine is not the only product of fermentation. Yogurts, cheeses, sauerkraut, bread, pickles, beer, bread, more. The food critic Sandor Katz has written a book called The Art of Fermentation with these words in it. We reject certain food because it is rotten. Certain food we can see is fresh. But there is a creative space between fresh food and rotten food. A creative space between fresh food and rotten food, where most of human culture's most prized delicacies and culinary achievements exist. Fermentation happens in the space between freshness and rottenness, between death and new life. As many of you know, Greg Johnson and Rainey Fox lost their home in a fire over the holidays. Greg is one of our longtime Sunday school teachers. He is the most even-keeled person I've ever met, someone with a gift for staying grounded and a gift for understatement. And the first time I learned that his house had burned down was when I saw a picture of it burning down on social media with his comment that said, "I guess this gives us a chance to do the Phoenix thing." The story of the Phoenix is one of the most well-known legends in human history, the mystical bird that is consumed by flames but rises again from the ashes. I'm willing to bet that most of us would not be willing to be so philosophical as we watched our home go up in flames. I know I would not be able to do it, and I do not want to suggest that his comment in any way minimizes the tragedy of losing a home, losing a workshop full of tools you've spent a lifetime collecting, losing 2 beloved pets. This is a body blow that can't be recovered from quite easily. Yet Greg and Rainey are preparing to rebuild. They're even soliciting ideas for more eco-friendly housing online, new kinds of housing designs, and so out of the ashes emerges the Phoenix. We learned this week on the anniversary of the insurrection that the Planned Parenthood clinic was burned down in an act of arson, no doubt political terrorism. And yet, with community support, with community action, a phoenix can rise from that fire also. There are many opportunities for transformation. This week I was talking with Reverend Johnny Skinner, and Johnny Skinner is probably my most quoted minister friend. And I remember during a particular election cycle, I won't say which one, but he was saying, he said, "I never have ill will toward anybody in political office." But I'm praying for some to find new jobs. I'm praying for some to find new opportunities, which is to say that some losses can be gains. Some losses can be gains. Every election season offers the potential for transformation. And the best way to fight insurrection is through reclaiming our democracy and participating in our democracy. Reclaiming and revitalizing our democracy. Of course, when you're a Unitarian minister, a tradition that welcomes dissenting views, you know there is always one person in the congregation, at least one person, who might be praying for you to have a new job or a new opportunity. That's true in any community that welcomes dissent. And if you've ever been a leader in a church, or a leader in a city, or a leader in a business, or a leader in the community, chances are you've had that moment when you felt like you had just worked a miracle, and someone else felt it was just an ordinary Merlot. Well, let me just say, we've all been there. Every single one of us has been there. This week, COVID Act Now indicated that our community is at the severe level of risk. Severe level of risk for transmitting the virus, which is why I am preaching to a mostly empty room. The decision to move back to online worship was painfully difficult. Indeed, we gave it 14 more days than we were required to see if we would go back into the lower category. But it just kept going up and up and up. So I want to thank everyone for working together to keep our community safe. I understand this decision feels like a death. This decision feels like a death. And yet our challenge is to somehow to take from this experience of death new life and new possibilities. We've covered some heavy topics today, so I want to end on a lighter note. I want to end by telling you a story about when I was a summer camp counselor, back when I was a teenager. And one of the real gifts I learned from being a summer camp counselor was how to transform boredom into joy. Because at summer camp, you don't have television, you don't have movies, you don't have access to radios, you don't have access to anyone to entertain for you. So you have to learn how to turn boredom into joy. And sometimes you have to get creative to do it. I remember once, me and my friend Steve Bartu, who was also a camp counselor, we decided to take over the camp office. And we declared ourselves the Camp Ocoee Liberation Army, and we got control of the public address system. And we announced that we had found a book in the camp library called 1,001 Jokes. But here's the warning. Every single one of those jokes was bad. Every single one of those jokes was bad. And so we said, we're going to tell one joke every 5 minutes until you reach our demands. And because we were teenagers and it was summer camps, our demands were things like ice-cold Coca-Cola and candy from your care packages. And to give you an idea why somebody might want to give up such things, they were really bad jokes. Here's the best one. And I'm glad we're online so I don't have to hear so many people groan, because these are not good ones. The best one was, what did the hat say to the hat rack? Stay here, I'm going on ahead. It gets worse, my friends. It gets worse. More representative of the low quality of jokes was, what's green and leaps over a building in a single bound? Super pickle. Or what's yellow and swims the seven seas? Moby banana. So you can see why people wanted to give us what we were sort of blackmailing them into. That's why, I don't know where the ice cold Coke came from, but we got it. And we got candy, and we got our demands met. And this is the other thing that I learned from that experience, is sometimes a joke is so bad, but you still laugh anyhow. Have you ever had a joke that was so bad that it made you laugh? Here's the thing about it, is once you start laughing, it's hard to stop. So once a joke is so bad, you start laughing, then you start laughing at the fact that you're laughing at such a bad joke. And you just start laughing, and soon you're just rolling all over the floor, laughing. And as mundane and as silly as that sounds, this too is transformation. This too is transformation, turning boredom into joy, turning joy into laughter, and the laughter turning water into wine. Amen.
Joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, God of love. Hearts unfold like clouds before thee, hail thee as the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the pain of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the joy of day. All thy works with joy surround thee, earth and heaven reflect thy rays. Stars and planets sing around thee, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, blossoming meadow, flashing sea, chanting bird and flowering mountain, call us to rejoice in thee. Thou art giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed, wellspring of the joy of living, ocean depth of happy rest, ever singing, march we onward, victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music lifts us onward in the triumph song of life.
So let's give thanks for hard times and find joy in sadness. Our closing words. I send you out now to share yourself with the world. May its promise and complexity set your mind ablaze. May you hold fast to what your life has taught you. May you question everything. And when you have changed the world and the world has changed you, may you return again to this place, in person or online or any way we can connect, and share what you have learned with us. So be it.
People living in all lands declare
As we leave this service, let's be creative and transformative in the ways that we stay connected. Give a phone call to a friend you haven't seen in a while, send a text or an email, or come to our virtual coffee hour. You'll find a link in the comment section, or you can go to the church newsletter that's been emailed out to all members and find the connection there. Go in peace. I'll see you in the virtual coffee hour.